I will never forget the first time I heard a hip hop song. I was 7 years old. And I know what some of you are thinking. That is very young to be listening to that genre of music. Now, I'm sure most of you guys, just like me, were not allowed to listen to music that cursed and music that talked about things that at that age I was too young to understand. But my father, growing up and loving and listening to hip hop music, was always trying to listen to it, but understood that he couldn't with his kids in the car. So he found a bit of a loophole. He found a song, by Tupac, called Ghetto Gospel. And this song is one of the only Tupac songs that doesn't curse. So he took advantage of it. When at any time I was in the car with him, that's what we listened to. And it started to become my favorite song. And I started to realize that, hey, I like this hip hop music. And it was something that caught my interest. And ever since that age, I've been obsessed with the music. And the obsession has never stopped. The evolution of hip hop is something that is historical. It is a story that has many bumps, has lots of crazy turns, and it is important to modern culture. A lot of things wouldn't be the way they are now if it wasn't for hip hop. I'm going to talk about the evolution. I'm going to start with the 70s to the 80s, 90s, even to the early 2000s, and to where hip hop stands today. As I said before, hip hop started in the late 70s, and it was a type of music that started for positivity. DJs were what hip hop was back in those days. So DJs like Afrika Bambaataa and DJ Grandmaster Flash threw these underground hip hop parties, and the purpose of these parties was to mediate the violence that was going on in the city. Hip hop did not start out as violent or gang music as many people think it did. It was used to bring people closer together and to show that there's a lot more hope than what's going on out in the streets. By the mid-80s, hip-hop was starting to develop its name, and it shot up to the forefront of music. One of the earliest groups in hip-hop was NWA, and with their debut album, Straight Outta Compton, they changed hip-hop forever. They introduced a new type of hip-hop called reality rap, which was rapping about things that are going on in society, things that they see, and things that are going on in their communities. And although they did this with very vulgar language and inappropriate language, people didn't realize that all they were doing is saying what was really going on around them, saying their experiences, and some people just didn't want to hear the truth. In 1992, in an issue of Newsweek, NWA was displayed and was talked about how negative and how violent the music is. And from that day forward, hip-hop was given this name of negativity and violence, and that's how it was looked at from there on. NWA changed the course of hip-hop. Although it helped it evolve, it also helped give it a name that many in hip-hop are not happy about. But no one can deny that NWA is one of the most influential rap groups in history. The 90s was considered the golden age of hip-hop because the music was something that even to this day people pride themselves on. The art was at its peak, and it was at its most popular time. Artists like Tupac and Notorious B.I.G., who were legends, who are looked at as legends now, were growing up and making music at that time. But it was something different about hip-hop at that time also. Rappers like Tupac were not just talking about the things they see, but were speaking up and talking about social injustices. They gave people a voice, people from their neighborhoods who wouldn't have a voice if it wasn't for them. Tupac discussed things like women's rights, rights for African Americans, and the government. It gave a different look to people, a somewhat educated view, and it definitely evolved the style. And late 90s and early 2000s, the rap game sadly started to decline. The quality decreased. Labels started to realize that this type of genre was controlling the entire music industry, so they grabbed a hold. And they started trying to control artists and try to shape artists and try to make music theirs. They told artists what they could and couldn't play, how they should and should not walk, talk, etc. The evolution of hip-hop took a bad turn at this time, and the music was not good, to simply be put. Hip-hop now is somewhat on the way up. People are trying to get back to the old customs and old styles. People like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole are storytellers and bringing back reality rap. People like Chance the Rapper are advocates for not signing to record labels, being independent and doing it on their own, because he sees what labels did to other artists, and he does not want to be like that. New paths are being paved using old customs. And this is so far the last step of the evolution. I know it will not be the last step in history, but it's so far how hip-hop has evolved today. I've taken you through hip-hop, from the 70s parties, to the harsh stories and depictions in the 80s, to the bold things in the 90s, and to the 2000s fall, and to today's rebirth. Hip-hop matters because it has such a huge impact on culture, and has changed the way we view things in our life. Modern culture would be so different without hip-hop, and its effect has changed society and has changed the world, whether people like it or not, and those changes will last forever because of hip-hop.